Hello internet, and today's video is going to be my September wrap-up, but before we get into some of the books, I am going to address a few things. Yes, I did change my channel name. It is now Tome Riddle instead of Riddle Solved. Basic history of that is the reason why my channel originally had the name Riddle in it is because I really like Tome Riddle. He is one of my favorite characters. I like him, okay? I know it's weird, but I do. And when I was coming up with a name for my channel, I wanted to have Riddle in the name, and then I came up with Riddle Solved. A while after that, I realized that to pay more homage to my best friend here, Tome Riddle, it would have been funnier if I had named my channel Tome Riddle, especially since all I really do is talk about books and book-related content if I'm not doing something else really weird. So I just decided to change my name, and I know it's kind of rude not to have a video doing a whole process, but I didn't want to lose the chance that someone else would have that strike of genius, because I had already put off changing the channel name for a couple months. Like for a while I've been thinking about it, and I was like, no, don't bother, but I decided, yes, I'm just gonna go ahead and change it. So everything is now Tome Riddle. That is where you're going to find me, except the business email address, that's still the same because I don't want to create a new one. But yes, my channel name is Tome Riddle, still me. It just pays better homage to Tome Riddle, one of my favorite characters. Next, yes, I am aware I have new bookcases. They are Billy bookcases from IKEA. I needed new ones because my other ones, they were holding up, let's just say that. So now we're gonna get into the books that I did read in September, and I'm not gonna lift up any books because I spent forever putting these bookcases together and putting the books on there, and I really don't want to pull the books back off. I had tried filming this video once before. I didn't really like how that one turned out, so I'm now refilming it. So you're just going to get a pop-up image of whatever book it was, and then of course there's going to be the stats in the corner because I was too lazy to count. And yeah, that's basically how this is going. So in September, I read, how many books? I read 15 books in total. It's a pretty good month for me. I think after having August just be so many books, I've just been relaxing. I've already read a lot of books this year. I'm not too worried about it. I mean, I have a lot on my TBR, but honestly, I'm not too worried about like my reading count or like, you know, I just don't really care at this point. So we're just gonna go through all the books I've read, starting with the first ones, ending with the last ones. So the first book was Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This was an adult sort of horror book. It was more like thriller horror-y, sort of something like I would say an homage to Jaws. So if you like Jaws and like just monsters coming out and like trying to eat people, that's sort of the feeling you get here, but it has like a lot of smarty science stuff in it. I'm not a scientist, so I can't tell you whether or not the science in this book was true or not, but it sounded real enough to me. So this book, if you're not aware, is a book about killer mermaids. It's about a bunch of people who go onto a ship into the middle of like nowhere on in the ocean to try to figure out whether or not mermaids are real, because they have been getting like little reports and stuff of boats going missing and things like that, and they think that the creatures responsible are killer mermaids who are set on eating people. So a whole bunch of people, this is a multiple point of view story, they all get onto one ship, all these scientists, and go see mermaids. And I really, really like this book. I liked the vibe of it. I liked the vibe of like killer mermaids coming to try to eat you. I like that vibe. I think if you like stories like that where it's like sort of a monster book, because in this case the mermaids are the monsters trying to eat the humans, then you'll like that. It sort of did remind me a lot of Jaws in the case like I was waiting for the dun 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 of the mermaids and everything. That was really great. I do think some people are going to find this boring because it's like it's not all killer mermaids. There is a lot of like science-y stuff going on where they're explaining why they're on the ship, what sort of science they are involved in, and that sort of thing as well. There's a lot of build up because it's supposed to be a thriller, so there's a lot of like science-y build up and stuff like that. I think it fits the story, I think it works with the story, but I don't think everyone's going to have the patience for this story. I would like to see this story as a movie. I think this would be a perfect sort of story to adapt. I think it would be really fun to see like killer mermaids on screen trying to eat people. I think it would be epic, and I really like this book. The second book I read was A Nameless Witch by A. Martinez, I believe. This is about a witch who has a curse placed on her. She had it placed on her family line, and she ends up being raised by a witch. And so this book follows her and her adventure after she kind of goes off by herself, and she has a killer duck familiar. It's a demon possessed duck familiar. She meets some other people, and like she just kind of goes on her way. She fights an evil magician. I don't know how to describe this book other than it was a book. It had that book feel. I don't like There was a plot, there were characters, there was things going on. It was neither good nor bad, it was a book. That was it. It's just a book. I thought like some of the concepts in it were really great. Like I liked her curse and how it worked, where she was like a kind of undead succubus who craved meat, specifically human meat, so she was kind of zombie-esque. I liked the idea of like a demon possessing a duck as a familiar. I thought that was kind of funny. Like a lot of the things really fit. I like the book. I wouldn't like go out of my way to praise this book or like highly recommend it, but I don't think in and of itself it is a bad book. It's simply a book that tells you a story. Like there's no real praise I can give to it. I mean, there's some things I'd like to say, but like we can save that for later. Other than that, it was simply a book that I read. It wasn't bad. Then I read Fish in a Tree. I can't remember who wrote this. It's probably like right here. Okay, it's Linda Mulaney Hunt. It's right here on my shelf. I know where all my books are located. I move them around enough that I probably should. Fish in a Tree just revolves around that concept that not everybody learns the same. So it follows a young girl who has come to believe that she's an idiot because now that she's in 6th grade, she still is not able to read at a good speed. And as such, she's sort of become a problem child because she tries to distract people from the fact that she is an idiot. She's not actually an idiot, she just doesn't know how to read as well because she has her own learning disabilities. So it's basically about understanding that not all kids have the same way of learning, of understanding, and you're going to have to teach them in different ways. I think it's a great book for everyone to read, just to remind you that, like, not everyone learns in the same way, not everyone thinks in the same way, and that's kind of why the book is called Fish in a Tree, because if you told a fish to climb a tree, it would go all day thinking it was dumb because it's incapable of doing that when fishes are meant to swim. So I did like that book. The character has dyslexia, so that's what it's around. That's her particular learning disability, but I do think just across the board it's a good book for if you have like kids or if you just like in general. I think it's a good book in general. It's really short. But if you want to kind of introduce that topic of, hey, this person has a learning disability and that is why they are struggling with this, it doesn't mean they're idiots, it doesn't mean you're stupid, it just means you need to be taught in a different way. And I think that's perfectly okay. And I think we need to remember that. I was always like the smart kid in class, and when I started like getting into fields where it's more competitive, like college and stuff, I always got really down on myself because I was like, why am I not as smart? This, and that. And you kind of just have to learn that for everything that you're bad at, for everything that you're not as good at, you're smarter than one person in something else. So all these super intelligent people that I would be associating with, talking with, and I'll be like, man, they're just so much better than me, and then everything, there'd always be one thing that I understood quicker and better than them. And so I think that's kind of what we have to remind ourselves, is that we're not less than anyone, no one's more than us. People just have different learning capabilities, and that doesn't mean anyone's super dumb or super smart, or like you get what I'm saying, right? I don't want to rant about this. I'm like on my own book opinion and talk about that book and how I feel on the subject. It was a good book. The fourth book I read was Poppy Wars. This is an adult book that is set in Asianic society. Is Asianic a word? I don't know. I'm gonna use it now. And it takes place during like a bunch of war. It is high fantasy, and it takes place during a period of time where there is like just wars, and they had just got off of a war, and now they're gonna be entering into a new war. And these wars all revolve around the drug poppy. Which, like, look it up. Poppy seeds, they're a drug, whatever. You know. Anyway. So, it all revolves around that, and it follows a 16-year-old girl, and she wants to make a better life for herself, and the one way she can do it is to take an exam, and this exam will get her into elite school if she passes at a very, very high level, and then in that school she's trained to be a soldier, to be in a part of the different part of the army once she completes school. And while there, she learns that she has a special talent where there are certain people who are kind of like, I don't know, like shaman, sort of like demigod type people, where they can call gods into their bodies and share their bodies with a god. But this is a very, very dangerous thing because gods are gods and you don't want to be messing around with this sort of power. I did like this book. I really liked the first half of the book, like directly in half. Split this book directly in half. I liked the first half of this book. This first half was great. I had a lot of fun. The second half, I'm less hesitant to say that I really like. I would say like the first half of the book was 5 out of 5 for me, and then the second half of the book was like a 3-star book for me. And that mainly has to do with our main character and her relationship with another character. I didn't really like it. I really did. I just have a lot of issues going on there that I'll talk about later. I think that this is a great book for a lot of people who like are really invested in high fantasy, who like brutal books, like where there's a lot of gratuitous violence, horrible shit happening. If you like books that are like really like, you'll like this book. Like, this book is pretty gritty. This book is like, okay, Game of Thrones, how gritty that is, and there's just like violence and death and stuff. This book is like that, where it's just like, you might enjoy it, but like, it's not gonna be a happy time for you. So I liked the book well enough. The next book I read was Space Battle Lunchtime, the first volume. I also read the second volume later. This is about a human girl who is confronted by an alien and asked, hey, do you want to enter a intergalactic cooking battle? And she says yes. And so it's just her in her intergalactic cooking battle doing her great alien bake-off and whatever. And it was really fun and entertaining. It has a sapphic love story. So there's female-female romance. It's really cute. It's just these 2 volumes. I liked it. I thought it was sweet. They bake a lot of cakes, so that's kind of funny to me. It was nice. The next book I read was Nevernight by J. Kristoff. This is the first in a trilogy. This one I read because I had been watching Game of Thrones with my roommate, and I had watched up to like season 4, right? And like right when season 5 came out, I stopped watching because I was tired of waiting for each episode, because I like binge watching TV. So then my roommate was like, hey, I have Hulu, you want to just watch Game of Thrones? And I was like, yes. So I watched Game of Thrones, and I love Arya Stark. And then I saw Nevernight, and I was like, that sounds like an Arya Stark kind of story, because it is about a young girl whose family is murdered, and she ends up going to a school for assassins so that she can learn to be an assassin, so that she can get revenge. That is basically Arya Stark's story. Like, their stories are basically the same story. I kid you not. They're basically the same story. You go watch all of Arya Stark's plot lines up until now in all the new seasons, and then you, like, because I haven't read the books. I don't know if I ever will, but I haven't read the books. I've watched the show. And then you read this book. They're basically the same plot line. However, I did not like this book as much as I thought I would. The main character just isn't my favorite. Her name is Mia. I just, like, she has a few things about her that I'm just like, she's one of those people that I'm not quite sure is intelligent. Like, she's not dumb, right? I know that. But she makes a lot of choices that just makes me go, are you dumb? But then she also makes some choices where I'm like, oh yeah, that's smart. But usually you never get to see her thought process that gets her to the smart ideas. You do get to see her thought process that gets her to the dumb ideas, which is the point where I'm just like, are you trying to keep her intelligence a secret from me, J. Kristoff? Because there are like a lot of points in this book where she like is like, I'm going to do this, and you're just like, that's fucking dumb. And then you see something going on in the background, and you're just like, girl, like, you paying attention? Because like obviously these people are trying to kill you. And then she never has any thoughts about it. But then like forever later, when that plot twist comes up, she's like, I knew all along you were evil. I'm like, then why didn't you tell me? Because I've been here thinking you were dumb the whole time. So I don't know why we're not allowed to see her be really intelligent, but we're not sometimes. And then there's just there were some things I just didn't really like about this book. And mainly all of them revolved around Mia as a character. Otherwise, I thought it was a fairly decent book. Next two books are Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. This is a duology. I really like this series, okay? I didn't think I was gonna like it. I thought it was gonna be like, okay. Like, I didn't think I was gonna hate it, but there are definitely a lot of books that I kind of buy because I'm interested into the story, but I don't necessarily have a lot of high hopes for them. I just expect them to be like a decent enough time that I don't hate myself, but like not my favorite book in the world. So I thought this would just be decent. It's about a female pirate. Her father is the pirate king. He sent her off on some mission, and she's gonna try to accomplish it. And I love pirate stories, but there's never really any that I love. So I was like, okay, I might enjoy it. I ended up really liking this. I loved everything about it. I loved like the sirens introduced. I loved her as the pirates. I liked everything. Everything about this was great. It was a fun time. It was great. I would have loved to see this. Like, this is another series where I'm like, man, this would be really interesting as a movie. Like, I thought it was great. There was only like two main issues that I had with it. One, the way that her siren powers are treated, where she's just like, I'm a monster sometimes. That annoys me. In any case, if you have awesome abilities and you think it's okay for you to complain about your awesome abilities, I'm pretty done with you, because I'm a boring ass human and I would kill to be part siren. No matter what the consequences were, they would be awesome. Plus, it's always the case with a lot of these characters when they hate that magical part of themselves. It's always like, well, have you practiced? Because maybe if you practice with your powers, you know how to control them, which ends up being the case here. But like, you know, there was that. And then there was another thing with the siren abilities. The main thing is that with the way their siren abilities works is that they can control people who would be naturally attracted to them. So this is a female pirate. She is part siren. It's not a spoiler because literally the title of the second book tells you, so I don't fucking care. It's not a spoiler. Anyway, so she's part siren, and she can like control and enthrall people who naturally attracted to her, the majority of which are all men. But they make this point in the first book to point out that there's this gay guy and he doesn't fall under her thrall, and she realizes, oh, it's because he likes men, right? So I was like, cool, that was interesting to point out. Awesome. Pointing out that a siren would only affect people who would naturally be attracted to her. And it happens that most of the people she meets are hetero men, but there are occasionally gay men who are not. Now, here's the part where I was like, okay, alright, maybe, fine. She has an all-female crew, and one of the main points she makes about having an all-female crew is none of them will fall under her enthrallment if she ever, like, sings and uses her siren abilities. And I'm like, you went through the process of pointing out that gay men aren't affected because they naturally aren't inclined to her disposition, and you're telling me that there is not a single female on her crew who doesn't find her a little bit sexy in a sexual romantic light. You got a pretty decent female crew. There's at least 30 or more people. I mean, like, and not I don't know. Like, I don't know how many are on her crew. They give a bunch of names. I think they give at least 10 to 15 names. You're telling me that out of all those women on your crew, that not one of them is slightly attracted to females. Okay, I call bullshittery on there. At least one of them, if not a full-blown lesbian and only attracted to females, is half attracted to females. Like, there has to be at least one bi person on there. Or, like, there has to be at least one person, one female on that ship that's romantically attracted to females. I'm sorry. I call bullshittery on that. So, those are the two main things on that. It had a great, like, sort of hate-to-love relationship. I was there for everything else except those two things. The next book I read was Serpent King by Jeff Zedner. This was a pretty good book. I read it because I've heard a lot of great things about this book. I liked it. I didn't like the female character, okay? I did not like her. I thought she was frankly really annoying, and I didn't like how she treated her friends, and I didn't like how she didn't admit she was wrong with the way that she treated her friends, or when her friends were like, hey, you're treating me in this way, or I feel this way about our relationship right now, and she would just basically be like, here, like, she'd start attacking them instead of listening to her friend who's like telling her, you're hurting my feelings, can you explain why you're doing this, because my feelings are hurt, can you stop? And I didn't like her as a main character, and as such, I didn't like the romance, because the romance is between one of our main characters and her, and I wasn't a fan. This book, I'm going on about the things I didn't like, but I didn't explain what the book's about. This book is about this boy whose family, the men in his family, have been involved with snakes in some way. Like, his grandfather had something to do with snakes, and mainly his father has a church, a cult really, but aren't all churches really cults, that revolved around snakes and holding snakes, and like, oh, like, Jesus, like, if you believe in Jesus, you wouldn't be bit by your snake, or like, you know, something crazy like that. But he ends up going to prison because he's a pedophile, and everyone hates this kid because they're blaming him for his father's actions and stuff like that. And so it's like him trying to process this, him trying to like figure out what he's gonna do with his life, and like if he's gonna get out of this small town. It has 3 points of view revolving around him and his other 2 friends, one of which is a girl and one of which is this other kid, this boy. And eventually there's a relationship between this one dude, the snake dude, and then this girl that he's been friends with, and I just didn't like her, so I didn't like their relationship. I ended the book with them like being all happy and sweet together, like, I hope you break up within your freshman year of college because of the distance. Like, and I've never felt that before. Like, this was definitely one of those times I was like, I hope this is just your first relationship, ends in heartbreak, and then maybe you two stay friends, but not really. Like, I didn't like this girl, okay? She still deserved better, okay? And then next I read Not Your Villain. I attempted to read this before, wasn't really feeling it, got it on audiobook, finished it, liked it enough. I think I prefer the first book, Not Your Sidekick, to Not Your Villain, but I did like Not Your Villain. This is about a transgender superhero. This boy, I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, he has abilities that are like changeling. His name is Changeling, but he has abilities where he can change his features and like create physical looking illusions. So he can change his hair color, his skin color, how tall, how short, what he looks like, all of that sort of thing. And it all revolves around like conspiracies of the government trying to use him and other people with metahuman abilities, and like all this sort of stuff, and like trying to control them, and how hero and villainy really works, and how it's all controlled by the government, and basically the government's fucking evil, while also having this main character who's a transgender man having like his own struggles and stuff like that. It's not so much about him being a transgender person and him dealing with that as much as it is about what the superhero-ness. If you want a book where it's about a superhero book but also has someone dealing with their transgender issues, I would highly suggest Dreadnought by April Daniels. That one really discusses the transgender issues and feelings that go along. This one less so. There are definitely points where he talks about taking tea, when he talks about his shots, where he talks about these things, but it's really a non-issue for him as a character. But if you want a book where that is a more prevalent issue and discussed while also having another plot line that kind of, I don't know, adds to it and distracts you to it from it as well, I would suggest Dreadnought. But otherwise, it was a pretty decent book and I liked it well enough. He was also a person of color, so that's a great thing. In this book, it's a transgender male person of color with a lovely person of color family. They're from the Caribbean. They were pretty lovely. I liked them. Next, we have All Rise for the Honorable Perry T. Cook. I can't remember who that's by, but like it's up here somewhere, you know, I put the picture. This is a middle grade book about a boy who has been raised in a detention center. So a prison, but like a rehabilitation prison, because his mother was put in prison before he was born, and he ends up being raised there. And he's now like 12, 13 now, and somebody's found out about his living situation and wants to rectify it, and ends up pulling him out and deciding to separate him from his mother and stop his mother's process of getting released for probation. So the two point of views are Perry and then his mom, and them talking about them trying to figure out how they can stay together and be a family and stuff like that. And it just kind of reminds you that people who commit crimes are humans too. And it was a really emotional read, and I was just like, mother-son dynamics, you're such a happy family, I want you to be happy, and stuff like that. So I'm not saying like all criminals should get away with shit or you should feel bad for all of them, but there is definitely a point for you to remember not to dehumanize people because of mistakes that they may have made. Next, we have the last two ones are Fence Volume 1 and then Fence Issue 5. So Fence is a graphic novel series by C.S. Picates, I don't know. It's up here. But it's about fencing, as you might have noticed given the name. So it's about fencing, and it follows this rivalry between these two boys, and all the volumes that are out so far, but particularly the first volume, is just about them trying to enter into the school so that they can go to fencing tournaments through their university or school or whatever kind of school they're going to. So we have our kind of underdog character who is like really poor. He doesn't come from the greatest family, definitely not the richest, and he really, really loves fencing, and he has like a connection to fencing that no one knows about because he's the secret son, okay? He's like the secret, illegitimate bastard kid. And so he decides that he's going to prove himself to his father that doesn't even know he exists, but he's going to prove himself, become the greatest fencer in the world. And then there's this other kid who's like second best, and he's always been second best, and he's fucking tired of it, and he wants to be the greatest fencer. And these two end up being roommates, and then there's like a kind of slow burn tension between them. You know? It's there. If you love slow burns, you're gonna love this. This does really focus on fencing and how the fencing relates to each individual character. There is a lot of queerness going on in this book, kind of in the background and stuff. There is the potential for queerness because we know these two main characters are eventually going to end up together. I don't know how long it's going to take because I have read up to all the current issues at the point of making this video, and oh my gosh, is it a slow burn. So if you like sports, like basically this felt like a sports manga or sports anime. Like if you like sports manga and sports anime, you're gonna like this. It takes a lot longer than I would argue sports manga do, but mainly because you can get like, I don't know, like if you've read manga versus graphic novels, I feel like you get more out of your manga than you do out of your graphic novel sometimes. So I don't know how long this story is going to be out, but after 3 volumes, it's a really, really slow burn. think it's great, but it's a super slow burn. So if you want something like that, do not read this, because this will take its precious time. But it's a beautiful hate to love to friend, like hate to friendship to love relationship. I see it there already. I'm ready for this whenever it happens. Alright, so this is gonna be really quick. I realized I forgot to talk about one of the books that I read. It was Serpent's Secret, I believe. This was a middle grade book about a girl who finds out that she is an Indian princess, and then she has to go and figure out how to save her grandparents, or no, save her parents before like the world ends, because her real dad is like some evil person. Anyway, she's a very special Indian princess, and she goes on adventures, and she has this other prince that's supposed to help her. It was really good. I enjoyed it. It was a fun story. It was really cute, and I'm excited to see what happens in the sequel. It's about gods, and they go to like a mythological place and everything like that. Something like sort of akin to Arusha and the End of Time, or like Percy Jackson, or like stuff in that realm. So it was a really good book, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't see it on my list. So here's this awkward clip. And those were the last books I read. So in the month of September, it was 15 books that I read. All pretty good. Nothing amazing kind of popped out at me. I mean, Fence was great. A lot of these other things were really good books, but like not like any new favorites or anything. So that was it for September. That's it for this wrap up. If you have any other great recommendations for graphic novels, I've been just really wanting to read just graphic novels lately, more so than anything else. So if you could just comment down below with some more recommendations for great graphic novels just in general, I would really love you guys if you did that, because I've kind of worked my way through all the ones that I know that I would like, so I need more. So yeah, down below in those comments, give me some recs so that I can read some graphic novels. But if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue some more, click all those buttons down below, and goodbye, internet.